hope you're good. I hope you're well. It's been a minute since I did like a sit down video. I am currently in the department, waiting for things to happen. So exhausting. And I just wanted to have like a little sit down video slash conversation about things that I wish I knew before getting into like a postgraduate degree, specifically a science postgraduate degree. I do have some notes, so I won't be completely like speaking out of my arse. So let's get into it. So I am back with a cup of coffee. It's a science mug that I got at a conference. So I am at home now, so if you can hear like noises in the background or like an echo or whatever, I do apologize in advance, but let's get on with the video. So before I get into the things that I wish I knew before getting into postgrad, I do want to talk about like my experience all the way from undergrad up until what I am currently doing. So in my undergrad, I studied a BSc in human life science without psychology. So with this specific degree, you do get an option of doing psychology or no psychology. So instead of psychology, I took two different biology modules. And then when I got into my second year, I had all the necessary human life science modules, and I took microbiology as my elective. And then by the time that I got to third year, by the time that I got to third year, I had physiology and biochemistry as my modules. So I only had like quote unquote two, but it was actually split into like 4 different modules. So I had 2 physiology modules and 2 biochemistry modules. And before I continue, I just want to say that like I initially wanted to go into medical school, and because I couldn't get in, I took human life science. But honestly, that's like the first mistake that I made, because getting a biomedical degree is not like a shortcut to going into medical school. Anyway, so after I finished with my undergrad, I initially wanted to do my honors in biochemistry, but I didn't actually know that I got into biochemistry in Stellenbosch University until after I had registered for physiology, because there was some sort of like error on the system. So I did go ahead and do my honors in physiological sciences, and that was like an intense year. Like aside for the pandemonium, we had so much going on. Like we had, I think, 7 different modules. If I'm not mistaken, it was 7 or 8 or 9. I can't actually remember. It was such a long time ago. But we did have like different modules that were split into like 3-week blocks. So every module was like 3 weeks. So you do all of your coursework and then you have like a test at the end. So in that 3 weeks, you have like a bunch of assignments. You just have a bunch of assignments, and then you have a test at the end of the 3rd week. And then at the end, so like around August-ish, we had like a giant 6-hour exam. Well, 7 hours if you decided not to take a lunch break. So that was that. And we also then had to write like a brain teaser, which was like a 12 to 15 page literature review on a specific project. And we also had to do our separate like honors thesis. So you had to spend like months in the lab working on a specific project. You had to write up your thesis. I think in my honors year, my thesis was about like 50 pages plus minus. So you do all of your research like yourself, and then you put together a thesis, and then you hand it in, and that's like your project, and then you also have to defend that thesis. So yeah, it was quite a lot. It was very intense. It was hectic, but we got through it, and here I am today. So right now, I am currently doing my master's in physiological sciences, but I am specializing in neurophysiology. So I am working on like a brain cancer project. If you're interested in knowing more about it, you can always ask me about it. But other than that, I don't think I'll go into even more details. So let's get into the things that I wish I knew before starting with my postgraduate degree. First thing that I wish I knew is that I shouldn't study further to avoid thinking about what comes next. So I've actually had this conversation with a lot of like students that are like in third year or in their honors years. And this is something that I wish I actually reckoned with at the end of my third year. And this is that at the end of your third year, that there's a lot of like uncertainty. Do I go to work? Do I continue to study and whatever? And the quote unquote easy answer is to go ahead and do like your honors degree. And in my year, we had the pandemic. So our options in terms of like going to work or studying a different master's at a different university, our options were quite limited. So to avoid thinking about what comes next after my honors, I just studied further. So here I am now doing my master's. But my master's wasn't actually my first choice. I wanted to do something completely different. Well, not completely different. I just wanted to do my master's in a different university. But because of the pandemic, like things like studying abroad weren't really an option because like it was the middle of pandemic. Other countries that I was considering actually had bans. So like, for example, I wanted to do my master's in neuroscience in France, and I couldn't do that because getting there for a South African was very much limited. The application processes were a lot different, and you still find that now where regardless of the pandemic, studying further for a lot of people is like the easier option just to avoid thinking about what comes next, because it does get very stressful thinking about what you want to do next. And just to avoid that, people just decide, okay, let me just do my master's or do my PhD. And that's a lot of time that you're sacrificing. So you need to be absolutely certain that this is what you want to do before you decide to study further. So for your master's, you're sacrificing plus minus 2 years. And then for your PhD, that's like another 3 years. And by the time you finish with your PhD, it's like, oh crap, I'm overqualified. I might as well continue doing a postdoc. And before you know it, you're like stuck in academia, but that's not what you wanted to do. So I do want to say, like, this is something you need to consider and sit down and think about it. Even if it's a difficult thing to think about, actually take the time to think about it, because you don't want to be stuck doing something that you don't enjoy. You don't want to be miserable and so forth. So yeah, think about what you want to do before you go ahead. And my second point is that the transition from undergrad to postgrad is not as easy as it seems. So like I've already mentioned, we had so much work in my honors year. It felt like I did my 3-year degree within a year, and even less because we only had modules between January and like July. So that's like 7 different modules that we did within like 7 months, and that was insane. And when you're in undergrad, I think in our third year per semester we had like 4 modules. So that's 4 modules that are spread between 6 months, compared to in postgrad where you had way more work, like way more modules, and then you also had to like work on your research project. And the thing is, once you're in postgrad, like now that I'm doing my master's, everything that I've had to do had to be something that I actually initiated. So when you're in undergrad, you have like a timetable that tells you classes are between this time, your practicals are at this time, you have an assignment that's due on this date. But once you're in postgrad, it's like you have freedom and your schedule is your prerogative. Like when I go to the lab and do all of this like lab work, research and all of that, that is something that I have to set for myself. I have to decide that, okay, today at 7 a.m. I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go to the lab and I'm gonna do this specific experiment. Like, it's not like undergrad where you have somebody telling you what to do and when to do it. When you're here, it's like I have to decide to do A, B, C, and D, and everything that you do is something that you said for yourself. You're like a full-blown unsupervised adult. So yeah, like I'm not trying to scare you or make you feel like this is something that you don't want to do. I just want you to know and be prepared for what to expect. So like once you get to your master's year, for example, because even with honors, we still had people telling us what to do and when to do it. But once you get to your master's, it's like you're completely on your own. You have no modules. You're just doing research. You have to write your thesis at your own time and everything is on your own schedule. So just be prepared and know what you're signing up for before you get into it. Okay. My third point is,
wow, the pressure is getting worse.
for some reason, postgrad is a lot more competitive than in undergrad. The classes are a lot smaller. You know the people that are in your year. Like right now, I can pinpoint the amount of people that are in the second year of masters. Like in our honors year, I think there was like 17 of us. So everybody knows everyone. You guys are in a very tight-knit group. Everyone sees each other's marks and all of those things. And even if you guys are in completely different research groups, it always feels like there's somebody who's competing with you just because of like how small the classes are. I wouldn't say classes because I feel like once you're in masters, you're not in a class, you're just on a level. But it does feel like you guys are competing for this invisible top spot and everyone is fighting really hard to be at the top. And it really isn't like that. Like I personally didn't care about other people's marks or anybody else's hierarchy or whatever. I think it's very important for you to like focus on yourself and the work that you're doing and not necessarily on what other people are doing, because that's just going to make you so miserable. So yeah, like for me personally, I didn't even feel like I was competing with anyone because we're all doing different stuff. We're all working in different research groups. Like it's not a competition, but other people treat it like it's a competition. So just focus on yourself and ignore everyone else. That's my personal opinion. The fourth thing is that you will learn a lot. And this is not just academically, like you will have your work ethic tested. Your time management skills will be tested, your presentation, selling yourself. Like there's so much that you're going to learn in a short amount of time. You will learn how to be resilient. And even if you decide to step out of like this space of academia, these are skills that you can still take with you into a different part of your life. Like other parts of your life will still need you to be resilient. They'll still need you to learn how to manage your time and present yourself and sell yourself. So you might feel like your degree is quote unquote useless, but there's certain things that you will learn in your degree and you can take with you into a different part of your life. The fifth thing that I will say is that postgrad demands so much out of you. Like it seems like you have more free time, but that's actually not the case. Like, yeah, it seems like you have less time, like you have more free time compared to undergrad, but there's so much that is required of you. Like going back to my honors year, it seemed like a year is honestly like, okay, I have a year, I have like 2 lectures a week compared to an undergrad, but there's so much that you were supposed to fill up your time with. Like all of those assignments, all of the time spent in the labs and so forth. Like, there's just so much time and energy and effort that postgrad demands of you that is completely different from undergrad. Like, yeah, sure, you could have worked really hard in undergrad, but like, your guys, postgrad drains the life out of you. Like, it demands so much out of you. And I just want to reiterate that this is not me trying to like discourage you from going into postgrad or anything like that. I just want you to know and have like a complete honest idea of the kind of things to prepare for. I hope that makes sense. I also do want to say, like, in you being a postgraduate student, your relationships with other people will be tested. Like, for me, I'm speaking from a science perspective, and there's so many instances where I've had to cancel on friends, and like, I've had to cancel on so many people because my work has just taken so much of my life and it's demanded so much of my personal life. But it's like a temporary period. It's like, yeah, sure, it's just like this week I can't do anything that I want to do personally. And I mean, there's so many times where you have to like cancel your plans or sacrifice relationships for your postgraduate degree. And this is purely coming from a science perspective, because if you're growing cells in the lab, for example, your cells do not care that you have plans with Sally on Saturday. Like, you have to sacrifice your time and your energy for your lab work. And that's something to know and prepare for and be aware of before you step into that postgrad space. If you can, start early. That's point number 6, by the way. So, for example, if you're writing a thesis, you already have your topic at the beginning of like your honors or your master's or your PhD year. If you are able to start your assignments early, start your literature review early, start getting ahead of your work. Because if you keep putting it off, by the end of your second year of master's, you have to hand in your thesis. And now you're only going to start writing your literature review. That's not going to be possible. Like, right now, I'm in my second year of master's, and looking back at my literature review, I think I have like plus minus 30 pages, definitely plus 30 pages, because I actually looked at it yesterday, and I do have like more than 30 pages. And that's not something that you can write within a night or whatever. I don't know. I mean, some of you guys are geniuses. Maybe you can do it. But at the beginning of your master's year, it is advisable to actually get started on your literature review, because that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So whenever you have the opportunity, start early. 7 is that burnout is real. So according to WebMD, I'm actually going to read this off because I don't want to lie to you guys. Burnout is a form of exhaustion that is caused by constantly feeling swamped. It's a result of excessive and prolonged emotional, physical, and emotional stress. In many cases, burnout is related to your job, but in our case, it's related to academics. It's important for you to take breaks and to do things out of academia that are important for you, and most importantly, get enough sleep. And just to piggyback off of that, my 8th point is that sleep is important. I know the university culture is to stay up until like 2 in the morning or whatever, but like nothing good happens past 2 a.m. I'm not gonna lie. Like, a lot of people will just sit there scrolling through TikTok, watching YouTube videos or whatever. But it's important for you to get enough sleep. It's important for your mental and your physical well-being for you to be well rested and to get enough sleep. Obviously, like, our circadian rhythms are very different. Like, for me personally, I prefer to get up early in the morning and get my day started at around 5 or 6 a.m. But I know other people who feel more productive like later on in the evening. And I've seen this in my 6 years of university, where I will get up when my housemates are going to sleep, for example, because that works better for them. So get into a rhythm that works better for you. So you don't have to have like a 5 a.m. morning routine. You can start your morning routine whenever. Just make sure that you're getting enough sleep in the process. 9 is something that I have personally experienced, and I think it's something that I'm still working through, and that is imposter syndrome is very real. So imposter syndrome is an internal psychological experience in which a person believes that they're not as competent as others perceive them to be, and as if they are a fraud. So to put it simply, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling like you're a phony in some area of your life, despite any success that you have achieved in that area. Oftentimes, you're not alone in feeling the sense of like imposter syndrome. So if you do have friends or people that you live with who are also postgrad students, open up dialogue, have a conversation about imposter syndrome, because you might not be the only person who's feeling that way. And instead of isolating yourself, talk to somebody. My 10th point kind of like ties in with the 9th point, and that you're not alone. Like, yeah, postgrad kind of does feel lonely, especially when you're surrounded by people who are in some sort of like invisible competition with you. I also want to add that it sort of feels lonely when everybody else that you know has like moved on with their lives, started their careers, started settling down, like getting married or having their own children and buying houses, while you're still stuck being a student. But you really aren't alone. There are other people who are feeling what you're feeling, who are experiencing the same things. So instead of like feeling like you're competing with other people, maybe sit down and have a conversation with them. You might realize that those people feel the exact same way that you feel, and everyone is just like competing with each other, but it's not a real competition. The 11th point is very much like real, especially in the science world, and it's that you can never plan ahead no matter how hard you try. So I'm on a bursary this year. I'm on the NRF, or the National Research Fund. And a part of the sections that we have to fill out is like, you have to set out like a layout of all of the things that you'll be doing within your masters and give exact dates and all of that stuff. And the thing is with science, like, you plan, but God laughs. I think that's like a Yiddish proverb actually. And that is, you can really try to plan ahead as much as you want, and things just don't work out. Like, I had a plan to actually have had my thesis handed in by September, but halfway through my first year of masters, I realized that the project that I was doing wasn't actually something that I cared enough about or was interested in spending 2 years working on. So more than halfway through my first year of masters, I changed projects. I had to brainstorm a new project, came up with something different with my supervisor. And even then, I was still pretty much optimistic, and I was like, if I do this in this month, or whatever, by the time September comes around, I will have handed in my thesis. But things went completely differently. Like, at the end of my first year of masters, so by the time I went home in like December, I basically, every single data point or research that I had gotten by the end of the year was not viable. Like, I couldn't use any of it because there was a huge error that I made in my calculations. And so at the beginning of this year, 2022, I had to restart my entire master's project. And I worked really hard and tried to still work on everything and try to get it complete by September, but like, you can't control everything. I tried my best, and there were times where I had to restart entire experiments just because there wasn't enough protein, or this wasn't working the way that we thought it would, and so forth. Like, you can plan and plan and plan, but you can never plan enough. For example, like, you can't plan enough. Like, things don't work out, things change often. So you always have to be prepared for things changing or things not working the way that you wanted to. So open up yourself for disappointment. That's such an unfortunate reality, but like things don't always work out the way that you want them to. So you just always have to have like a backup plan upon backup plan and be prepared for things not to work and be prepared to readjust and try again. Number 12 basically builds up on number 11, and that is you need to actually get used to failure. Science is one of those fields where 99% of the time things don't work out. So you need to be prepared for things to fail, and you just you have to deal with it somehow, unfortunately. And you have to be like, when you get into like a science field or postgrad field, for example, you just have to be prepared for things not to always go your way, and you just need to figure out how to pivot from that and work it out to be successful. My next thing is, I wish I knew what life in postgrad would have been like. So for me personally, I kind of knew that there was going to be like a lot of lab work and all of that stuff, but I didn't know to what extent they would have been. I think I was a little bit optimistic, and when you're in undergrad, you have this false sense of what science looks like. And so when you get into postgrad, you're like, oh, I'm so excited to do all of this lab work and whatever. And then once you actually get into the labs, you realize that it's not what you thought it was going to be like. One thing I want to say is that a lot of lecturers or PIs, like, what's a PI? Primary investigators or something like that. PIs, like a lot of the lecturers or PIs really love it when students reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm interested in being in your research group. Can I shadow you or somebody in your research group? Like in my department, for example, they will be more than happy to pair you up with like a senior student, and you can like follow them around in the lab and actually see what they do. That way you get like a real sense of what postgrad is like, compared to what you have in your mind based off of like 3 hours of practicals a week. So if you do have the opportunity to shadow someone or like reach out to a lecturer and have a conversation with them, it would help in actually understanding what life in postgrad is actually like, as opposed to what you think it'll be like. Another thing with shadowing, it helps you to realize whether you're going into the right degree or not. Like, a lot of us went into postgrad with this idea of what postgrad was going to be like. And then once you actually get started with it, you realize that, damn, I was so wrong. Like, looking back, the amount of people who stayed in to go on to masters after honors, I think was like half of the class. We actually had a girl drop out of honors within the first few months, because then you realize that I'm actually not in the right degree, or I'm not doing the right thing, that I it's not what I thought it would be like. So when you do have an opportunity, sit down with like senior students or lecturers or whatever and just get like the real sense of what postgrad is like. Number 14 also ties back into number 13, and if you've noticed, I really do like to just melt things into each other. Number 14 is do a lot of research before you decide to study further. So a lot of the times you are interested in a specific technique, or you know that you want to go into like medical research, but a specific type of medical research, or you're like, I actually want to go into medicine and this is not what I want, or whatever. Or sometimes you know the career that you want to end up in, but it's not necessary for you to get like a postgraduate degree. So do a lot of research before you decide to get into postgrad, because you might find yourself being overqualified or going ahead and pursuing the wrong degree or whatever. Like, it's not always about like finding the wrong thing. Like obviously you're still learning something valuable in where you are. It's just that you could have saved yourself hundreds of thousands of rands. So it's important for you to do research. I know it can be daunting and overwhelming and all of that. I mean, I've been there before, but it's very, very important for you to sit down and do the hard work of researching where you want to be and the necessary steps that you need to take to be where you are. Time is a very, very valuable thing. Like, for me personally, I've had moments where I was like, oh, I'm still young, even if I mess up, like it's gonna be okay. But you also have to consider that you're spending money pursuing all of these things. And also, like, it's very, very emotionally exhausting for you to be stuck doing something that you're not happy doing or you don't enjoy. So make sure that you're doing enough research, speaking to senior students who are in that specific field that you want to go into, or for example, if you have researchers or like lecturers that you look up to, try to schedule a meeting with them and find out what it's like being where you are, because you don't want to find yourself being stuck studying something that you don't enjoy or studying something when you actually didn't need to study further. You don't want to find yourself being overqualified for the field that you want to go into, and you also don't want to find yourself being underqualified. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Make sure that you do enough research and speak to the right people before you go ahead. And please, like, if you're watching this and you're at a crossroad and you're not sure what to do next, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always more than happy to help, or like, I'm available. I do like to surf the web from time to time. So yeah, I'm always available and I can help you just reason through things. Number 15 is probably one of the most important points that I will make. So now you're in postgrad and it's time for you to pick the research group or who to work with, etc. It is very, 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 I can't stress this enough. It is very important for you to pick the right supervisor. I honestly feel like it's important for you to pick a supervisor who first and foremost sees you as a human being and not as somebody to generate data for them. You are a person, first and foremost. You're not a data point. You're not like some sort of like machine that's on autopilot that just like generates data over and over. So pick a supervisor that you feel like you will work well with. Something that I did before I picked my supervisor was I spoke to people in my department, people who worked with a specific supervisor that I'm working with. I also spoke to other people outside of my research group, just because sometimes people are part of the research group and then they leave, and I just wanted to find out why they left, or sort of like their thinking or what they've seen from this person, even though they don't work with this person. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's very, very, very important to find somebody that you will work well with and somebody who also has a good track record. You want to work with somebody who's ethical if you're in the science field, but you also want to work with somebody who respects you as a person and doesn't look down on you or thinks of you as like, I mean, for me personally, I am in Stellenbosch University where majority of the students are white, and you want somebody to work with that doesn't just see you as like a diversity student, but actually sees you for the kind of work that you do and what you are bringing into the research group. So yeah, I think that's very, very important to consider before you settle with a supervisor. At the end of the day, you want to settle with a supervisor who is just as invested in your future as you are. So vet those people, send those emails, meet up with those senior students. Like, this is about your future. It's not about that supervisor's feelings. It's about your future. and the person that you're going to be working with. You don't want to spend 2 years of your master's or 3 years of your PhD with somebody that you don't gel with. You're going to be miserable, trust me. Number 16 is that having a mentor is very important. Like, this is something that I didn't actually know before getting into postgrad, but the more you get into it, the more you can actually see, like, okay, this person knows more than me. I should ask them for advice. Like, having a mentor is such a good thing. For me personally, I was very lucky to be paired with a co-supervisor who turned into like a mentor for me, and somebody that I look up to, somebody that I can get advice from. Your mentor is not your supervisor. Your mentor is somebody that you need to go to complain about your supervisor. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I am kidding. But what I'm getting at is like, your mentor is somebody who can give you good career advice. Your mentor is somebody who can read through your work to give you like good rational advice. Like, sometimes supervisors don't want to hurt your feelings, and so they're not honest with you. But for me personally, like, the mentor that I had, she was brutal. But at the end of the day, I am so grateful for the advice that she gave me, because I think it made me into the scientist that I am today. It's made me such a hard worker. It's made me so much more like particular when it comes to my writing, and more critical, and like, it's just been so great. And that's basically what your mentor is. It's somebody else who's sort of like in the same field as you, who is honest, who can help you out when your supervisor can't. That's the basic explanation. I'm probably wrong, but like, that's how I feel about my mentor. Next, I'm gonna say that your career or your research project is not your personality. Like, it is so important for you to find who you are outside of like your career or your research or what you're studying. Like, it's so easy if you were to ask me, for example, hey, tell me about yourself. Probably the first thing that I'll tell you is, hi, my name is Nsuku and I'm a master's student, because I feel like that's that's turned into my personality. But like, what you're studying is not your personality. You need to take time to find who you are outside of what you're studying. Like, how would I describe myself actually? Like, I would say that I'm smart, I'm funny, I'm this or that. Like, I am a person outside of what I'm studying. And even if what I'm studying doesn't work out or fails or whatever, like, I can still identify who I am outside of my career or what I'm studying or what I'm not interested in. But like, your career is not your personality. Just find who you are outside of your career or your research or your degree, because your degree will test you in the most insane ways, and you need to find coping mechanisms outside of your degree. And I think that's also something that fuels depression or anxiety or whatever, when you feel like you don't know who you are outside of your degree, and you find so many people being miserable because, oh, like, my research project is not going well, and my research project was the be all and end all of who I am, and because it's not going well, then I'm not doing well. But that's not the truth. Like, you are a person outside of your degree, and you're also allowed to hang out with people who are not in your field. You're also allowed to set boundaries within your field. Like, don't let neurophysiology slash neuroscience come into your personal life. Like, neurophysiology is not me. My glioma project is not who I am. And outside of that, like, I have friends, I'm creative, I do things outside of my project, and that's what you need to do. You need to find your personality outside of that. Like, it took me such a long time to figure that out, and there were times where I was putting my project over my well-being, but like, I need to find who I am outside of that. I hope that made sense. And finally, postgrad will really, really test you, like mentally, it'll test you. And it's so important to take time to step away and just find things that calm you, that relax you, that make you happy. And this goes back to my 17th point, like find friends outside of your career and your degree, because yeah, like it's just gonna consume all of you. And that's it. I feel like I've had so many like random tidbits here and there, but I do hope that you found something helpful out of that. Other than that, like, please let me know what you wish you knew before starting your respective degree or going into postgrad in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching until the very end. I hope that this was useful. I think once I've handed in my thesis and I'm no longer affiliated with this university, then I will properly spill the tea on what my experiences have been like in this university, whose name I won't say. But yeah, I'll share my experiences on like racism and what it's been like being a Black student in this university, and not just like being a Black student, but all of my other experiences as well. Thank you so much for watching until the very end again. I love you so much, and I hope to see you in the next video. Please remember to like, share, comment down below some of your things that you wished you knew before postgrad and some of the things that you would like me to talk about in my next video. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!